Welcome back to the Pro Sports Podcasters on YouTube. My name's Cobe, and today I want to talk a little bit about Own the Moment Rumble. That's the all-day fantasy football and the strategy you should employ to do as well as you can in this upcoming season. And I wasn't actually planning on doing this video until much closer to the NFL season, but in the last week or so, I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube from other content creators that are really misleading, and I don't want our followers to get caught up in something that's just bad information, okay, when it comes right down to it. And probably the straw that broke the camel's back in this situation was I actually saw a video this morning that was advising their followers to purchase defensive moments in anticipation of using them as heroes in the Own the Moment Rumble platform. No. Hell no. You should not be buying defensive moments in anticipation of Own the Moment Rumble. You really shouldn't. Not rares, at least. There's nothing wrong with having a bunch of great defensive moments in your collection, and you can get those as commons. If your goal is to stockpile moments or to have moments prepared in your collection to use as heroes, defenses or any defensive player should not be one of them. It should not be. And in this video, I'm going to go ahead and explain why and highlight a number of different moments that you can purchase now before maybe they go up even further. They have been going up in the last little while. For my PSP insiders, those of you who have gone to the website www.prosportspodcasters.com and scrolled to the bottom and signed up to become a PSP insider for free, you've already gotten my 3 top OTM Rumble hero moments in the newsletter, right, that we send out to our members. You've already gotten it. And I hope you reacted quickly, because within 48 hours of me sending out that information to you, those moments have all gone up by a minimum of 10%, some more. They've all shot up since I gave you that information. So hopefully you went ahead and you got one of those moments at least right off the bat. If you've got the wallet for it, hopefully you got all 3. I went ahead and got one. I purchased my one specific one right off the bat before things went crazy. So I'm happy to have done that. But there are a number of moments not listed in that group of 3 that still count. And in this particular video, I'm going to go over them. But before we get into which moments they are, I want to talk about the actual rules around OTM Rumble. So I've got the website open here. First of all, it's fantasy football. It's an 8-position roster. It's PPR, so 1 point per reception. That's very important when selecting which moments you want to be using as heroes. And let's just start from the top and work our way down. I'll go over the roster first. You get to roster 1 QB, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 traditional flex. So that means you'll get to roster an additional either running back, wide receiver, or tight end, and 1 defense special teams. And of course, you can only roster moments from your actual collection. You don't just get to pick random moments, otherwise everybody will be running pretty close to the same roster every single week. There's got to be moments that you actually own. You connect your Dapper account to their account, and then they're able to verify which moments you have. You can go ahead and select your roster. And then they have this additional bonus for selecting a hero. Now, a hero has to be a rare or legendary moment, and you can only have 1 in your roster. So in those 8 roster spots, you could literally have 7 commons and then 1 rare and make that rare your hero. You can also have 7 commons and a legendary, make the legendary your hero. You could have all rares, but you only get to select 1 of them to be the hero, and the hero gains an additional 25% point bonus. Now that's important because you don't want to just select anyone to be a hero, like say a defense. You want to select players that are going to have the best potential to have the maximum amount of points that week. You don't want to select, say, a defense that's going to get you 10 points, and then because it's your hero, you get an additional 2.5. You're much better off selecting, say, Cooper Kupp, who gets 30 points that particular week, And as a result of that, you get the bonus 7.5 bonus points. Right? So you want the highest scoring position possible as your hero. And there's a lot that goes into this, and I'm going to use last season as an example as to why certain positions and certain players are better than others. And depending on your strategy, whether you should just, conserve your wallet by one specific moment to run with pretty much all season long, or divide it up amongst a few key players in order to switch them in and out depending on the week and the matchups. But we'll get into that. Now, the scoring system, when we look at this, we'll go with the offensive scoring first. It's 1 point for every 25 passing yards. So as a quarterback, if they throw for 100 yards, 4 points. 200 yards, 8 points. 300 yards, 12 points. And 300 yards that's a great game, right? So you're looking at it as sort of a yardage starting point, right? If you think you can pick a quarterback that's going to throw for at least 300 yards, you got 12 points in the bank right there. Then they get 4 points for every passing touchdown. So if they throw two touchdowns with 300 yards, now you're looking at 20 points. 1 point for every 10 rushing yards. The majority of the quarterbacks aren't rushing that much, but you have a few exceptions where their feet really play a part. So you've got players like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, maybe Justin Fields this year, possibly Trey Lance this year, who may get a significant boost to their point total by the amount of rushing they do in that offense. But again, that's speculation. Then we've got 1 point for every 10 receiving yards. So whether you're a wide receiver or a running back, if you're catching the ball, then every 10 yards receiving, you're getting a point. So if you put together 100 yards receiving, it's 10 points, right? A quarterback has got to throw for 250 yards to match that. So keep that in mind. Same goes for rushing. It's 1 point for every 10 yards rushing. So again, running backs who are carrying the ball a great number of times during a game are going to be racking up the points just based on yards because there's only 1 for 10. You get 6 points for a rushing touchdown or 6 points for a receiving touchdown. So you get that additional 2 points over a quarterback throwing a touchdown. So that factors in, right? Only quarterbacks are generally throwing every touchdown. There's rare cases where trick plays and such happen and someone else throws a touchdown. But for the most part, quarterbacks are always a part of that touchdown equation, whereas wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, it's random as to who they may go to unless they have dedicated number one targets that in the red zone. And that, again, is determined by the offense and the particular team you're actually following. You got 2 points for every 2-point conversion. Makes total sense. And then it's decimal scoring, which means you get 0.1 points for, say, a 1 yard rushing or 1 yard receiving. They factor in every single yard. So you do have decimal points included. Okay. We'll go down to the defense and special team scoring. They get 1 point for a sack, 2 points for an interception, 2 points for a fumble recovery, 6 points for a TD. So if they get a defensive touchdown, 6 points. 2 points for a safety, 2 points for a block kick, 2 points for an extra point return, 10 points for 0 points allowed, 7 points for 1 to 6 points allowed, 4 points for 7 to 13 points allowed, 1 point for 14 to 20 points allowed, and then you're going to have a flat neutral, 0 points for 21 to 27 points allowed, and then -1 for 28 to 34, -4 for 35 plus. They get a 3-point bonus if they are the winning team. This is kind of unusual. This is not traditional standard scoring here. So that additional 3-point bonus can factor in, but it shouldn't be the reason you select your defense. It really shouldn't. Now let's move on to examples from last season and how that factors into what you should do this season when preparing for Own the Moment Rumble. And what I've done is I just randomly selected 7 weeks out of last season. I'll start with week 1, and then there's random weeks that I've selected, and I've gone over and I've picked out the players who broke 30 fantasy points under the PPR scoring that this system uses last season, and then which positions were included in the top 10 of each particular week. And it starts with week 1, and that particular week, 6 players broke 30 PPR fantasy points that week. In order of the top scorer to the sixth is Amari Cooper, wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver, Kyler Murray, quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, quarterback, Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, and Adam Thielen, wide receiver. And in the top 10, it had 4 wide receivers, 5 QBs, and 1 tight end. So in that particular week, the wide receivers shined when it came right down to it, and the quarterbacks were kind of like the safe play, okay? There was 5 quarterbacks in the top 10. And you're looking at the top quarterbacks here, right? The obvious ones. There wasn't really an outlier that particular week. So quarterbacks are always going to be a factor, but what you'll notice is that they're rarely the top performer. And that's, again, based on the scoring system. So then I moved on to week 2. And in week 2, there was also 6 players that broke 30 PPR fantasy points. And they were number 1, Derrick Henry, running back. Number 2, Aaron Jones, running back. Number 3, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver. Number 4, Kyler Murray, quarterback. Number 5, Lamar Jackson, quarterback. And number 6, Tyler Lockett, wide receiver. So that particular week, it was the running backs, right? Your top 2 positions are running backs. But in the top 10, we again had 5 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, and 2 running backs. So it was just those 2 running backs that stood out, right? They were the ones that really popped that particular game. You still had half of your top 10 as quarterbacks. So again, I'm saying, if you have a high-end quarterback as a rare in your collection, it's something that you can just sort of throw in there on any given week if you're not sure who to go with and feel pretty good about it because they're generally putting up good points every single week. It's just wide receivers and running backs tend to be the ones that pop. Then I jumped to week 7. And in week 7, only 4 players broke the 30 PPR fantasy point barrier. And number 1 was Cooper Kupp, wide receiver. Number 2 was Jamar Chase, wide receiver. Number 3 was Alvin Kamara, running back. And number 4 was Mike Evans, wide receiver. And in the top 10, we had 4 wide receivers, 3 running backs, and 3 QBs. So wide receivers were the money that particular week, but QBs still played a factor. They still had a significant portion of that top 10. Running backs, of course, are always going to be involved at some point. It's just, again, running backs have the ability to really go off in specific weeks and other weeks just be shut down. It depends on what happens with their offense in that particular game, that particular week. I went to week 8. Only 3 players broke the 30 fantasy point barrier. Number 1 was Michael Carter, running back. Number 2, A.J. Brown, wide receiver. Number 3, Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver. And the top 10 included 5 QBs. Once again, half the top 10 was QBs, 4 wide receivers, and just the 1 running back. But that 1 running back was the top scorer that week. It was Michael Carter. In week 9, we had 4 players who broke the 30 fantasy points. We had number 1, Jonathan Taylor, running back. Number 2, Lamar Jackson, quarterback. Number 3, Justin Herbert, quarterback. Number 4, Nick Chubb, running back. And then the breakdown of the top 10 was 5 quarterbacks. Again, half of them quarterbacks. 4 running backs. The running backs really, showed out that week. And then the 1 wide receiver. And the 1 wide receiver wasn't really that high. So wide receivers have some real risk reward as well. And when it comes to looking at strategies, I'm going to go over what these numbers really mean to you and why you should construct your collection a certain way. I went on to week 13. 5 players broke the 30 fantasy point barrier. Number 1 was George Kittle, first tight end on the list. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. Number 3, Kyler Murray, quarterback. Justin Jefferson, of course, wide receiver. Number 4, Deontay Johnson, wide receiver. And number 5, Chris Godwin, wide receiver. The top 10 included 4 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs. So it was kind of spread out that week. But the position that shunned the most was wide receiver, although George Kittle, a tight end, was the top performer. And that's because specific tight ends, when I say specific, I'm talking about George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews are probably the big 3 that have TD bonus potential. These are big targets in the red zone, and every now and then can go off for like 3 or 4 touchdowns in a single game. So that's always a potential, but you won't see too many tight ends on the list week to week. In week 14, which is the next one I chose, 7 players. 7 broke the 30-point fantasy point barrier. Number 1 was Josh Allen, quarterback. Number 2, Dalvin Cook, running back. Number 3, George Kittle again. So he was on a kind of hot streak. tight end. Number 4, Devontae Adams, wide receiver. Number 5, James Conner, running back. And number 6, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver. And then the top 10 included 3 QBs, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and 2 running backs. So it was, again, sort of spread out. But again, QBs had a fair proportion of that top 10. And then when I look at the season-long average, so this is averaging out the points of these different players over the entire season, the top 10 scorers by position are 5 of them were quarterbacks, so half of them were quarterbacks, 3 were wide receivers, and 2 were running backs. And that's why those are the 3 most important positions when selecting which rare or legendary moments you should have as your heroes. Those are the 3 you should really be looking at. And then, depending on your strategy, if it's to spend the least amount of money, but give you the best opportunity to just slot in one hero every single week, it should be a quarterback. But if you can spread it out, you definitely want a little bit of the running back and a little bit of the wide receiver. And if you're on a real budget, then tight ends can help you out here. And we'll get into that next. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've scoured the marketplace and I've picked out the best value moments, rares, at each position currently available right now. And I mean, if you have no budget, then whatever, right? If you have zero budget, then just get the best ones available to you. Buy them all if you can and just be ready for a full season of selecting whichever person you think is going to go off that particular week. So what I've done for you is I've scoured the marketplace and I've figured out the absolute best value moments at each position. Now, some of these are not cheap, okay? But if you really want to compete at Own the Moment Rumble, you're going to want to have a combination of these or at least one that you can slot in every single week, depending upon your strategy. And I'm going to begin with the quarterbacks. And the best value quarterback moments to target right now are Matthew Stafford. He's currently at $135 in the marketplace. And Kyler Murray, who's at $185. So these are not cheap, but again, they're quarterbacks. And they're quarterbacks who are very volatile quarterbacks on high-powered offenses, very good teams that can just go off at any particular moment. If you noticed, Kyler Murray's name came up on a few of those random weeks I selected from the previous list. So he's definitely one to consider if you don't mind paying upwards of just under, $200. Matt Stafford, this will be his second season in the LA Rams system. He's now got an additional target in Allen Robinson to throw to. There's a very good chance that they're going to bring back Odell Beckham Jr. for later in the season. But even to begin the season, you're looking at Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, and Tyler Higbee as targets. That's pretty awesome. Okay, they've also got, Van Jefferson, who they're developing as well. So Matt Stafford's got a lot of targets to choose from. Very good offense. Obviously worth it for the price. He may not ever be the number one guy, but he's going to give you decent points every single week. So he could be, either of these could be one of those moments that you buy. This is your one particular rare and you just slot it in every single week except the bye week, right? Then at running back, I've got Alvin Kamara at $100. Now this is a risk reward option here because Alvin Kamara is probably going to see a suspension happen at some point this season. It's even possible he could get convicted of his crimes and not even play this season. So that's one of the reasons why he's only at $100. Alvin Kamara should be a $200 moment when it comes right down to it. But because of the off-field issues, there's a possibility that his moment might be useless this year. So that one comes with a little bit of a warning. Then I've got Austin Eckler at $186. Again, expensive, but Austin Eckler is he's a top 3 running back, really, when it comes to fantasy. And he's very consistent. He rarely gets injured. It's a big thing here, right? So Austin Eckler at $186, pretty good deal. And then Dalvin Cook at $190. Dalvin Cook's an even better fantasy option than Austin Eckler, but doesn't see the field as often as Eckler. He's a little bit injury prone. He's got a shoulder issue, and that's a kind of recurring thing. So that's your risk there. At wide receivers, I've got a bunch here, right? And this is one of the reasons why I think wide receiver is such a good option for so many people. And you could afford to get a couple of wide receivers instead of just, putting all your eggs in one basket with, say, a quarterback. So I've got Mike Evans at $95, Michael Pittman Jr. at $98, Cooper Kupp at $132, Keenan Allen at $148, Jamar Chase at $150, Stephon Diggs at $156, and CeeDee Lamb at $165. And the beauty of this is looking at that list, I mean, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, they all stand out to me. There's, depending on personal preference here, you can go with any of these guys and have a potential of popping in any given week. So wide receivers got a lot of volatility. You will have weeks where these players won't put up great numbers, but you'll also have weeks where they just absolutely go off. And this is a weekly fantasy system, right? This isn't you're carrying your points over for the entire season. This is they've got winners every single week. So what you're hoping for is to just kick ass on one particular week or multiples, depending on how often you're hoping to win here. But it'd be nice to at least pop at least once, and these are the kind of players that allow you to do that. And then I also got tight ends in here, and I've got George Kittle at $88, Mark Andrews at $90, and Travis Kelce at $95. And that's why I mentioned that tight ends are a real good budget option. Those are the three best tight ends, pretty much, in the league. And they're all under $100 right now. So if you don't want to spend too much money, but have a rare hero that you can play almost every single week, and there's a chance they could go off and even be the number one scorer that week, tight ends where to go. Now, I've included a few budget options that if you want to be involved, own the moment Rumble, but you don't want to spend too much money, the budget option at quarterback is Kirk Cousins, and I mentioned this in a previous, I said rares only roster video. Kirk Cousins as a quarterback is at $75, and I've seen Kirk Cousins finish in the top 5 of quarterback scoring numerous times in his fantasy career. And this particular year, they're going to kind of ramp up the offense a bit. So I like Kirk Cousins at $75. That is a steal in comparison to other quarterbacks of his caliber. At running back, I've got Rashad Penny. Now, the Seahawks lost Russell Wilson, so their ceiling is a little bit lower, but Penny is really the only truly healthy option that knows the Seattle Seahawks system like the back of his hand. Sure, they brought in Kenneth Walker as a rookie, but it's going to take him a while to kind of get used to how things work there. And Rashad Penny showed at the end of last season he's got the ability. And then at wide receiver, I've got Hunter Renfrow, who was a Pro Bowler last year. Sure, they brought in Devontae Adams, but that should open up Hunter Renfrow underneath for a lot of single coverage against maybe their weakest linebacker. So at $75, he's kind of a discount wide receiver option. But again, he's not that far off some of the wide receivers I offered. And I'm not going to do a discount tight end because the tight ends, they're all below $100. You're better off to get one of those top targets. And these are the guys you should be targeting. On another video I watched earlier this week, I actually saw another YouTuber suggest that Nyheim Hines could be a factor in performance-based challenges or fantasy. Hell no, okay? Do not go out and stack Nyheim Hines. Do not buy Nyheim Hines hoping he's going to be in a performance-based challenge. Not going to happen. I'd be willing to wager that he does not factor into a single performance-based challenge this entire season unless Jonathan Taylor gets hurt. There's a reason why Jonathan Taylor is the number one pick in pretty much every fantasy draft. And that's because they use him like a running back from the 90s. He literally carries the offense on his back, and it's not like Nyheim Hines is going to vulture touchdowns. They keep Jonathan Taylor in at the red zone. Nyheim Hines, we wouldn't know who he was if he joined the Indianapolis Colts after Jonathan Taylor was already there, but because Jonathan Taylor came after the fact, we now know who Nyheim Hines is. He's a pretty good pass-catching running back, but since Jonathan Taylor arrived, he's inconsequential, so don't grab him. Now, for those of you that might be unaware, we have partnered up with Own the Moment for their Jolly Joker Sports Society. That's an NFT they're launching quite soon, okay, that will give you premium access to the Own the Moment website. It also enters you into a best ball competition through their Owners Club platform and will become the premier NFT sports community pretty much anywhere. Now, if you want to be a part of this, because we are a community partner, when you go on to the Own the Moment Discord or you purchase a Jolly Joker through the Own the Moment website, you're going to find out that you get to select a particular community to be a part of. If you choose us, first of all, we'd appreciate it. We do get a commission from you going in, but that commission is put toward a community wallet that we then use to buy prizes for our particular community, to send our community to events. We're actually going to reward people right off the bat for every 5 people who select pro sports podcasters and the purchase of a Jolly Joker NFT. they will be entered into a giveaway. It's for every 5. So this is a 1 in 5 situation where you'll win tickets to a sporting event in your market, right? We're going to make sure it's your market so you can actually attend. Okay. But more importantly is that whatever revenue we generate through their Jolly Joker Sports Society, we're going to put it back into rewarding our particular members. On top of that, it's going to be pretty competitive because you're going to have the different community partners represented on all of their platforms. So you're going to see us represented on the Own the Moment Rumble. You're going to see us represented in the Owners Club Best Ball and sort of their fantasy football variant. And we're hoping to see our community, our members, including myself, at the top of the leaderboards. And we're dedicated to passing on our information to you so that you're able to pretty much choose the best lineups every single week and give yourself the best chance of success. We want to beat everybody. So it comes right down to it. One of the reasons I started this channel is because I saw a lot of misinformation on the internet that just didn't seem to make any sense to me whatsoever, like stacking a Naheem Hines, that kind of information. Using a defensive player as your hero in Own the Moment Rumble. What the hell, man? Like, let's pass on some real information. Let's kick some ass this season, and let's get the most out of our NFL All Day collection. Till next time.